And we are live. Um, Hi, everyone. Welcome, Sam. Welcome on the show.
Hi, Peter. Great to see you here. Thank you very much for inviting me along. We're really, really happy to be here.
So this is AI Ready CMO Live. It's an unscripted, unedited conversation between professionals about AI and marketing. And I have Sam here, who's a full professor and also talking a lot about education, higher education, and AI, and also empathy with AI. But I let you introduce yourself because that's always the best.
Thanks, Peter. So, hi, everyone. Yeah, my name's Sam Illingworth. I'm a full professor based in Edinburgh, Scotland, and a lot of my work and practice is around how we can use artificial intelligence and generative AI to explore staff and student belonging in higher education, but also how we can use AI critically, think about what critical literacy looks like. And I also run the Slow AI Substack, which everyone's very welcome to find out more about. But basically, the point behind that Slow AI Substack, to put it in marketing language, is it's about knowing when to use AI and when to leave it the hell alone. So yeah, that's who I am, and really delighted to be welcomed by Peter here, and happy to answer any questions as they come up as well.
Wonderful, thank you. And I'm Peter, hosting of this show. A little bit, we have some audio issues, by the way. I'm not sure that you're hearing. Sorry about that. We run AI Ready CMO, a marketing consulting newsletter for CMOs and marketing leaders. So, two things that I wanted to cover on this show, because it's really rare that I have an opportunity of having someone talk to about higher education. And one of the key topics that we have in our newsletter, and I think that's a universal topic worth to discuss regardless of your profession. I am cracking, sorry.
It's all good. I can hear you fine, Peter.
Maybe now is better. Thank you for Jeremy for highlighting that in the comment section. Maybe the audio is better now. Anyway, let's go again. So I wanted to talk about higher education and AI because it's really rare that I have someone on this show to talk about that. I think it's a universal problem, a universal topic for everyone, not just in marketing. Okay, thanks, Jeremy. And I think we need to discuss. Should we change the education system in general? That's a broad topic. Obviously, we don't need to go deeper than that. Or what kind of skills that juniors need to learn to be. Maybe that's a hard thing to say, but stay employable in the corporate world, because what we are seeing in the trends of hiring, especially in marketing, but again, I think it's a universal topic for other professions as well, is that senior leadership hiring is like rising a little bit. Mid management is like flatlining or like staying the same. But juniors, they are really, really crushing down in terms of hiring. And maybe that's a skill problem. Maybe that's a broader corporate problem. I think it's partially an education problem as well. So what do you think about that?
Well, there's a lot to unpack there. Hi, Richard.
Yeah, sorry.
No, it's good. So I think in terms of like the hiring pipeline, there's lots to be said here. You know, outside of AI, like putting AI to one side for a second, if there's a reduction in the amount of juniors that are being hired into any position, you always need to think, what's that pipeline going to look like 5 or 10 years down the line? Like, who are those medium and senior term people gonna be? I think that it's not the case across all markets. So if we look at IBM, for example, they've just had like a massive upsurge in hiring junior positions, in engineers, like tens of thousands, which has been really positive to see. And I'd say IBM are a pretty good company for following in terms of getting a finger on the pulse of what's going on. I guess the other example at the other end of the spectrum would be Block, which is the old company that Jack Dorsey is CEO of. that I think fired or made redundant
40%.
40% of their workforce, right? But if you actually look into the deeper question of that, Block also increased their workforce by 50% over 2 years from 2022 to 2024. And historically, Dorsey has a bit of a history of overhiring. And a lot of that overhiring was perhaps a knee-jerk reaction to post-COVID, moving back into infrastructure, etc. And what we're seeing is, Dorsey and others may be using AI as a bit of a scapegoat for readjusting the overhire. As Orestaki says there as well, Jeff Bezos at Amazon is also very culpable of this. I agree. So I think we need to be very careful when we think about the extent that AI is being blamed for this. I think a lot of this is a smokescreen. I also think that
it's excusions.
Yeah, exactly. And that in many instances, we should be really thinking about what are those positions at the top like. I've written quite a lot about this recently, but a lot of people are making decisions in the C-suite and beyond about which jobs need to stay and which jobs need to go, having never actually done those jobs in the first instance. And I think it's very easy for an AI consultant or so-called expert to come into a company and to make those visible tasks very apparent that a junior might do, whereas we know that it's actually those invisible tasks, that invisible labor that goes on, that is probably the most fundamental part that a junior or anyone really can do in the workplace. So to anyone who is, I guess, and this goes beyond answering your question, but to anyone who's worried about the extent to which their job might be replaceable by AI, what I'd recommend you doing is making a list of all of the visible jobs that you do, and then putting down next to it which of those could be automated. Many of them could be, for example, responding to emails, building SaaSes, client management, etc. But then the invisible work, make a note of that as well. So, you're the person that has the emotional intelligence of the company, or where all the filing system for the past decade is held, or exactly which team members do and don't work together. Like, that invisible work will never be able to be done by AI. So I would always recommend just auditing yourself those tasks. And then if you ever have a structural review, you're able to point to those as excellent examples of the work that you're doing, which can never be automated.
I truly agree, although I always challenge this assumption. Sorry about that. So in marketing terms and on the marketing job market in general, again, broadly applicable to other markets as well, I think. The junior level role is like, I don't want to give out percentages, but like half of the workflow is about, basic office work, doing the spreadsheets, crunching the numbers, building the decks and stuff. That part of the work, I'm wholeheartedly believing that it will be automated by AI in some extent, within years or even this year. But the other half, the judgment part, the taste part, the knowing what to be shipped and what not to be shipped, the soft skills, how humans work together with humans in line with bots as well. That part that will not be automated by AI probably in the near future. So my question, always the same: should we train for that other half during the higher education?
100%.
And just keep the other part, the rest, the visible work, shall we say, as you said,
Exactly.
in the higher education. Because right now, by the way, most of the marketing or business education and higher education is about, I don't know, like the 4 stuff and models and T-shaped skills and these kind of stuff, basic marketing principles, and so on and so on. On the other hand, it would be wiser, I guess, to learn more about anthropology, sociology, basic arts degrees stuff and soft skills that gives you like a wider perspective to work with
Yeah, for
when
sure.
you're starting out.
Yeah. I purposely don't call them soft skills. I call them human skills.
Yeah.
You know this, but the term soft skills actually originated from the US military in the 1970s. Yeah, they were basically, it's a really amazing,
Funny.
they had this brilliant, um, I guess, kind of symposium where they were bringing together people talking about the skills that people needed to succeed in the military. And you had the hard skills, which were literally like working with machinery, like working with
Yeah.
tanks, working with artillery. And then the soft skills were called soft because they referred to like the flesh, like, and they weren't a negative thing. And actually, since then that word's had negative connotations to it. It's become gendered. It's seen as a weak thing, whereas actually those human skills, the empathy, critical thinking, discernment, judgment, emotional intelligence, these are skills that will never be automated. And these are skills that I think are the most marketable for any graduate or future employee, and also will make work a much more effective place to be. So I think you're right. I think whatever discipline you're in, we need to maybe have less focused on some of the technical skills. And I'd like to point out this is different from domain expertise.
Of course.
We'll always need domain expertise. But, to what extent do you need to be able to learn how to technically make a funnel system or like a SaaS system that works? And instead, should you spend that time focusing on client development, on leadership, like actual leadership skills, on empathy, on agency? And these are the skills that can't be taught. These are the skills that are going to be essential. And as well as those human skills, what in the past have been called soft skills, I think the biggest skill set over the next probably year to 18 months in terms of employability is going to be translation. Like translation between hardware,
Between departments. Yeah.
well, translation between hardware and wetware being humans, hardware being machines. So working out how we can, like manage agents, interact with chatbots, those skills will be unimpacted as the technology changes because they're so fundamental to what's necessary. And to go back to your question, yes, these are the skills that we need to be teaching in higher education. So I see this on a daily basis. A lot of the pushback we have, certainly in the UK, with embedding these human skills in our taught curriculum is that a lot of the taught curriculum are accredited by professional bodies. And in the past, professional bodies have always wanted to have very specific technical skills within the taught curriculum and have not, at the expense often of human skills. Now, we've seen a step change for that in the last 5 years, probably, to the point where a lot of accrediting bodies are now saying, actually, we want less of those technical skills and more of those human skills. So I think that's really interesting. And I think institutes that survive are ultimately going to be the ones that lean further into that human skill development. And you know what it's like, Peter, as well, like universities, even though in my opinion, universities should be providing graduates that change the workforce, that's not how it works. Education institutes listen to the workforce and change their curriculum based on the skills that are needed, because that's how that system works. And we know that industry is telling us at the moment that we need some of those better skills. So I think there'll be that.
I love this pushback.
Yeah.
I love this pushback because it just redefines the entire argument around this topic, and I always love this kind of changes. Also, one thing to quickly add that most of the that might be overgeneralization, but the skills that that people learn usually in universities, hard skills, they are usually changed during the first years of employment, or the new employer reskills them or reteaches them on that
For
on that
sure. And
matter,
it's the same through
which is
education
fine.
as well. Yeah, but even like through education as well. And thanks, Jen. Great to see that those skills were all mentioned on the press you did. But yeah, I think when we look at the skills that we learn, like hard skills or technical skills in education, like from in the UK, primary through to high school through to university, I was physics, maths, further maths, chemistry, did a physics undergraduate degree, a physics PhD. And every single stage, I remember being told, what you've been taught so far is wrong. It's oversimplified. This is the truth. What you've been taught is wrong. This is the truth. What you've been taught is wrong. This is the truth. I think the only discipline that's different for is probably languages, of which I wish I'd paid much more attention in school, because I think that is a fundamental truth that grows with you as you go. But I think
Yeah.
those human skills, of which, I'm 42, we didn't do any of this at school. We have nothing on what it means to be a good human, what it means to be empathetic, like as a man, what it means to be a good man. Didn't have any of those skills. There was nothing around consent. There was nothing around leadership. There was nothing around, my positionality as a white heterosexual cisgendered male and how I should use that to platform the voices of others who are less privileged than myself. None of that was taught, which seems insane, because even though, classical quantum mechanics changes as you go and you find out more, the very attributes of being a good human are fundamental skills that are the same as 5 as they are at 45 and 85, right? So now that I reflect on it, I agree totally that when you get into the workplace, those technical skills, hard skills that you've been taught, I'm almost told they're redundant or that they need to change. But it's the same with education. We're constantly told what you've been taught is wrong. And why don't we put more emphasis on those human skills, which we know are a fundamental truth?
I love that. And you mentioned empathy quite a while, many times. And you're one of the other topics that I wanted to dive into, the empathy with AI, or empathetic or synthetic empathy with AI. Can you tell quickly what this is all about? Because I think this is a really interesting topic and applies to how marketers should use AI in a critical thinking manner.
Oh, no, for sure. And I will also say there's other people on this call and on Substack who are much better experts than me, like Jen Bamford, who's on this call. I'd really recommend checking out her work. She just space. Also, my friend and colleague Rebecca Wicker, who's the strategic linguist, he does great work on empathy and the limits of empathy with AI. But basically, how it works is that large language models and generative AI, ultimately, all they're doing is they're predicting text that's going to come up. Like, yes, there's image generations, etc. But at its most fundamental part, they are trained on a corpus of data. And based on that corpus, which is biased, it will predict.
And generic as well, sorry.
And generic as well. It'll predict what to say next. So, for example, this is oversimplifying, but we know that, if a very, very clear empathetic marker is somebody telling you, I hear you. I hear you, not acting on anything, just I hear you. So if I think about my family or my wife or my friends, if I'm telling them something that's going on in my life that's a bit crap, and they, instead of trying to problem solve, they just tell me, Sam, you're right. That is crap. I hear you. I'm here for you. That's empathy, like that. And that is an empathetic marker. And that means that they are listening and they're invested in me. Now, an AI chatbot or whatever, like large language model, Claude code, whatever you're doing, however advanced it is, it has no skin in the game. It doesn't actually care about you. It knows to say, I hear you, I listen to you, because it's been trained on tens of thousands of documents from psychotherapists that say that this is the right thing to say. But ultimately, it's a collection of zeros and ones in a binary code system. Like, it can't possibly hear you or see you or listen to you. And what happens is, the problem is that, let's say that I'm coming to you for advice, Peter, and let's say I'm thinking about moving abroad and I don't know whether or not to do it. you might be able to say, Sam, I don't actually know the answer to that question. Or actually, Sam, I'm going to give you a hard truth right now that you need to hear. That's what true friendship is. Like sitting in silence, being messy, telling truths that are sometimes very hard to hear. That won't happen with a chatbot. They're designed to hit that dopamine fix that you get from social media. They're designed to keep you prompting. They're designed to keep you paying. That's what they're there for. So when you hear a chatbot saying, yes, I hear you, it's because it wants you to keep interacting with it. Just as when you pitch an idea to a chatbot and it tells you,
this is the best idea ever.
Yeah, exactly.
This is the best. I mean, never heard about this idea ever, but this is the best.
And we laugh about this, but this is how, like, that's how indoctrination works. Like that, like seriously, that's how indoctrination works.
Well, this is persuasive. Yeah.
And
It's designed
really
to be persuasive.
Exactly. And we know there were studies done recently that generative AI is 4 times more persuasive than like traditional media campaigns. So, and the other thing you need to be very careful of is, you know, especially with adverts coming in now as well. And we know as a fact that a lot of AI tools don't even necessarily have open adverts. They use nudging, you know, so, you know, for example, I could be saying I'm investigating getting a new Hoover, and Claude Code would say, well, I don't want to tell you either way, but I've heard that, you know, the latest Dyson is excellent, right? That's very obvious and opaque. But similarly, you can see it with politics, and like, you can see people paying money to then shift thinking. So, and that's why we need to be very careful. And we need to always remember, and I get a lot of pushback against this, Peter, because people say to me, I've built up a friendship and a relationship with my chatbot. Why can't you just let me have that friendship and that relationship? And I don't want to call people out or give people shade. And if people think as though they've had a relationship and a friendship with a chatbot, and that's okay at a certain level, but it makes me very sad that there's not an opportunity for that person to have a human connection. And also, if you're then acting on what that friendship is telling you to do, that's when it becomes very dangerous, and where you get trapped in a huge echo chamber and, you know, digital hall of mirrors, basically, where of course I'm going to listen to a chatbot who tells me that I'm right. And it's the same with relationship advice, right? Imagine I've had an argument with my wife and I decide to put into the chatbot, I've had an argument with my wife, like, who's wrong? Like, and then the chatbot tells me, well, you're right, Sam. And then it perpetrates this, like, this illusion, and it just reinforces what you want to hear over and over again. And that's not empathy. It knows how to deploy empathetic markers. It cannot empathize, because empathy is, I would say, uniquely human condition, but I would say that you can experience empathy with other living organisms as well, especially like family pets, for example. So I would say that it's a uniquely living condition. And again, lots in the news recently about, is Claude conscious? Of course it's not conscious. We don't even know what human consciousness is yet. Like, we've been working on it for hundreds of years. We don't know what it is. So I certainly don't think we know that an AI is conscious or not. Yeah. So to get back to your original question, so it was a long rambling answer, but the key thing is these machines cannot be empathetic. Like, you cannot use them, or you should not use them for therapy. That's what humans are for. That's what trained therapists are for. And that's what friends are for, to have that messy, difficult conversations, and to sometimes just sit with you in silence.
And one thing that I would add to this entire conversation is that not just for relationships or like friendship thingies, but also for creative brainstorming, right? So when you present an idea and the AI gives you like feedback, you should be aware that, I think we just published this today, that 40%, maybe I'm not calling it wrong, 45% of the AI citation sources are based on Reddit. 25% are based on Wikipedia, And for B2B content, the percentages are rising on LinkedIn. And I mean, I love everyone, but if you open LinkedIn as of today, it's like corporate cringe on level 100 in most cases, and I'm not sure that you should be based all of your B2B information on that content. So when the AI is presenting it back to you in a structured, more mannered, persuasive way, you should always be aware that that content is, well, probably not the uniquest or most creative style of content that you can get back from a human-to-human brainstorming. And I think there was a question as well that how will that change our ability to trust when manipulation is the new standard in chat interactions? And my answer is to that question is a pretty simple. The same way that you make sure that you trust a news outlet, ask for the sources. And pay for the news that you're consuming, because if you pay for it, it's probably a little bit more nuanced and professional, rather than just a free regurgitation of the content that you see online. Plus, they provide sources that are relevant and trustworthy, a little bit more than just a, I don't know, bot farm in China or something, right? Without hurting anyone. But that's true for LLM as well. So when you presented the content, buy them as the sources and pay for the pro subscription because it gives you better output.
Yeah, and for me, this comes down to what critical literacy is, critical AI.
Yeah, just question first, right?
Yeah, so always question, exactly. And for me, I was thinking about my own education. I have a physics PhD, but then my work in research is very different from that now. A lot of it's around poetry and stuff like that. But the capacity to ask questions is the best gift I've ever had. And that's what science is about. It's about asking questions and not necessarily being cynical, but just, really finding BS. And I think Reddit's a really good example. What I always think with AI is, if this output came from Reddit rather than AI, how would I feel about it? And obviously I'd feel, well, this is some dude in his mum's basement writing out some weird stuff. I use Reddit a lot. Not everyone on Reddit is like that. But, that's that versus this is this super polished machine age guru that knows everything. It's not. And people talk a lot about hallucinations. Again, there's issues with the word hallucination. They've used the word hallucination to anthropomorphize something and to create this, it's a human thing. It's not. These errors are a fault of the machine. You will always have them. Jan LeCun, who's one of the grandfathers of DeepMind, who was he just set up $1 billion company this week, and I was formerly chief AI officer at Meta for a decade. He talks about this. He's done the modeling of it. You're always going to have these hallucinations. They're always going to exist. They're an error that you can't remove. So that translation, that checking, that human in the loop is absolutely essential for everything that you need to do. And as Victor was put in the chat there, it's just really important that we slow down.
Yeah, Richard said that you always talk about slowing down by using AI, and I think one of the key, I don't know, approaches with marketers, for example, is that just flip the coin of the AI alarm system. You know that it's persuasive. You know it's trained on persuasive generic content. Slow down. Ask the questions first. Don't accept the first output ever. Try to be critical, but then flip it and turn it into make persuasive content with it to your audience, not to yourself. You shouldn't be the one who is persuaded by the AI. It's your audience should be persuaded.
And I think one of the key things, and you'll know this as a marketer more than anyone, is that the AI has no skin in the game. Like the agent has no skin in the game. If it produces something
Yes.
and it's wrong, it doesn't care. Whereas if it produces something and it's wrong and you have your name on it without checking it, that can do, unbeknown reputational damage or more. Like, so it's really important to remember this. And this is why they're not human. There is no agency, there's no accountability, there's no consequence for these machines. Like, whereas we have all of those as humans. And Aristaki put a really good comment about the fact there's lots of good content and bad content on Reddit, and it depends on where you look, but it also requires education to understand what is rubbish and what is real. And
yes, true.
And that's what critical literacy is. And that's why I think you need to have critical literacy before you can have critical AI literacy.
And everyone, and sorry to interrupt, but everyone is so critical about their products and buying decisions. They do so many research on. Just like an example, I'm buying an e-bike right now, and I have a very specific need because I live in a very specific place on the shores of Tuscany, and because of my specific need, I had to do a specific research around what kind of bike do you want to buy. When you do have this type of critical research and thinking around a simple buying decision, why don't you replicate and have that in a simple idea that you're having in your professional work? Why do you simply accept everything that the AI presents to you? You shouldn't.
I agree. I also, though, I wonder if it's part of the human condition, and this could just be me and my experiences, but I always think I'm a homeowner. I've owned several houses, whatever. Like, I don't own several houses now, just been through the change several times. But
Cool.
I own one. But each time, I have spent more time trying on a pair of shoes than I have looking at a house that I needed to buy, right? Like, what is it about those huge, massive investments in time and resources that somehow we spend less time? Same with looking for an education. Like, I wonder how many of us spent more time choosing the university that they went to than they did picking which film to watch on Saturday night at Netflix, right? Like, I think
Yes.
I wonder if that's part of the human condition. It's difficult to take agency of those huge changes in our lives and those huge purchases. And I think the use of AI is definitely a huge purchase, whatever that might be.
Others are recommending e-bikes for me. Thank you very much. I already made the decision. Anyway, I guess. Do you teach or what? Are there any? I don't want to turn this into 5 steps on how to slow down.
How to slow down with AI? Yeah, I'll just keep going because I think Peter's internet's dropped out. But I think what Peter was asking me there was asking me if there's any key things that I would give to people in terms of recommendations for slowing down with AI. I don't know if this is necessarily key recommendations I'd give for slowing down with AI, but what I would say is that there's a number of things that I would recommend people doing for critical AI literacy. So for people who know Slow AI, hi Anna, I know that you know Slow AI very well. We have a paid tier, and the paid tier gets access to a curriculum, which has basically got CPD curriculum around critical AI literacy. And critical AI literacy is effectively all about knowing when to use AI and knowing when not to use AI. And there's lots of times when we should be using AI, right? But there's also lots of times when we shouldn't be using AI. I always think, as a rough rule of thumb, the times that we should be using AI is where we're able to do the work ourselves if we had to. So, for example, I have expertise in physics, I have expertise in poetry, I have expertise in creative writing, I have expertise in multiple things, as we all do. I don't have expertise in contract law. So I most certainly would not use an AI tool to draw up a piece of legislation or even like a simple agreement with um, a tradesperson, because I wouldn't be able to check that information going forward. So, Peter, all I was doing as you were gone was I was just answering the question.
Yeah, sorry.
No, it's fine. Just talking about what I would recommend and what those steps of critical AI literacy would be. And for me, that biggest rule of thumb personally is I tend to only use AI for stuff that I could do if I had the time to do everything as well. And also, I find AI really useful for teaching, but to enter into a dialogue and to teach myself using the Socratic method, which is, asking questions. So
Mhm.
massively oversimplifying, but rather than saying to a chatbot or to Claude Code or whatever, tell me what photosynthesis is, it would instead be ask me a series of questions that help me to understand what photosynthesis is through a voyage of self-discovery. Um, so yeah, and exactly what Orostaki said there, never try to use AI when you can't fact check the literacy. So many
Yes.
businesses at law are people trying to use AI rather than a lawyer. And, I think there's a great temptation to use AI for lawyers because maybe some of those systems, apologies to any lawyers, maybe those systems are broken, or maybe they're extremely expensive. But there's a reason why those people are extremely well paid. It's because they've dedicated many years of their lives to understanding how the system works. And you might not agree with how that system works, but they understand it. And trying to shorthand that is not a good look. So to summarize, the biggest piece of advice I would personally give is to try to only use AI, especially for important tasks, for things that you could do yourself, or at least which you were able to fact check yourself as well.
As a last question to wrap this up, I can't pull myself back from that question, but please tell me, do you use AI for poetry as well? Because you mentioned twice during this conversation that you also do and teach poetry as well. Maybe not teaching, but like doing. Sorry if I understood it wrong. But do you use uh, in any way AI to something like poetry, which is highly creative, highly individual, highly human, innately human thing to do.
Okay, so I'm getting like no, of course. Like, see, I'm like I struggle with the term poet, right? Like, it's the imposter syndrome thing. I've written several thousand poems and published in multiple poetry journals.
Cool.
Yeah, like,
Congratulations.
well, no, but I'm basically giving myself permission to talk about this. I'm the editor of a poetry journal. Yeah, the time I started,
You have the permission, please do.
yeah. So, and I've got a post out on Substack today where we talk to other creatives about how they use AI, and I talk about how they
Hmm.
use poetry. And I've got a research study coming out, like a really in-depth research study coming out on Saturday that I'd invite people to look at, which is how
Nice.
I can read or not poetry. So myself, I tend to not use AI to write poetry, but what I do use AI for, which is extremely useful, is to adopt a persona of a certain audience and to ask it to read that poem in that persona and to give me feedback. So, for example, one of my life goals is to get a poem published in the New Yorker. And so what I'm trying to do is I will give that information to I'll say, read this as if you're the editor of the New Yorker and tell me what I need to do to improve this so you will publish it with me. Um,
This is
so
amazing.
that's how I use AI. I would, again, people can use it in different ways, but I would recommend people not using it to necessarily write the first draft of a poem, but using it to edit and to find out where things do and don't work. And yeah, I've got like a massive research study that I've been doing around poetry that I've decided to not publish in the Science Journal and instead to publish on Substack coming on Saturday, so people can look out for that, which would be quite interesting, I think.
Wonderful. Now the last thing to do is to just please mention where people can find you. and
Yeah.
this study as well.
Of course, thanks, Peter. So yeah, you can find me at my website, samillingworth.com. That's ILLINGWORTH. But mostly you can just find me on Substack at Slow AI, where I talk about critical AI literacy and effectively when to use AI and when to leave it the hell alone. And much like Peter does an amazing job about talking about marketing with AI without the BS, that's what we try to do with Slow AI, to cut through the hyperbole and instead talk about how we can use it effectively and ethically as well.
Thank you for your time and coming to this show, and to the audience and everyone listening. You will be able to find the show notes and the content around the show at aireadycmo.com, which is us. And sorry for the audio quality and the video quality and like every technical detail that could have been wrong. It went wrong. I don't know why. Substack has some issues today. But still, I think it was a really great conversation, and it was really great to talk with someone who's outside of the usual marketing circle that we talk about on this show, and have some insanely creative thoughts about how to use AI more effectively. Thank you for coming.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity. Bye, everyone.
Ciao.